When I was a rabbinic intern for a congregation in suburban New York, teaching the 6th grade religious school class, one Sunday morning we had our first session following January 6th. I asked my students how they were feeling and what was on their minds. One 6th grader said, "It was scary that the man who lost the election said he really won and sent his supporters to go hurt people in the government. That's never happened before in my lifetime." I told him that he expressed his emotion very well and that this had not happened before in any of our lifetimes, not since the Civil War. Another 6th grader said, "They're always telling us we have to share, but the man who lost the election, he won't share." 2 days ago, we received news that will impact the future of America, the American Jewish community, and the world. We held a gathering here in the sanctuary last night to be together and to share our thoughts and emotions. People said they are deeply concerned about the rising hatred of the other in American society and politics, including anti-Semitism. People voiced alarm over a political culture that muddies the difference between facts and falsehood. People expressed empathy over those who are living in isolation or have been left behind and feel anger. People also expressed concern about the growing tendency in our society to respond to anger destructively rather than constructively. People shared their fear that people who need abortions will not have access to this medical care, which is permissible in halakha, Jewish law. People shared their fear of what will happen to critics of government policies, such as journalists, and to those who wish to exercise the First Amendment and protest. We spoke about Franklin Delano Roosevelt's 4 freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. And Ronald Reagan's first inaugural address, in which he celebrated the peaceful transfer of power, saying, "In the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle." Last night, we spoke about how far we are now from those days. One feeling that people voiced multiple times was that we are in uncharted territory. How do we know what to do in a situation we had once never imagined we would face? As my 6th grader said, this has never happened before in our lifetimes. And how different are we from my 6th grader? Chaotic times bring out the inner child in all of us. Again and again last night, people used the words fear and afraid. How do we respond to this uncharted territory? Jewish tradition affirms that even when we are heading into the unknown, there are fundamental truths that stay with us. We have the power to show each other kindness, care, and love. And we will love each other through each day of the coming years. There is always something we can do in response to any situation we face. No era lasts forever, no matter how imposing or permanent it may seem. And it is precisely the good acts we do that bring us closer to a better era to come. Even in uncharted territory, the compass of these truths can guide us. First, even in the most challenging circumstances, we always have the power to love each other. In the Torah, in Vayikra, Leviticus, we find the words, "Love your fellow as yourself," "V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha," words that we say at the start of every service, according to the Kabbalistic custom. The iconic sage Rabbi Akiva says in the Talmud, "Love your fellow as yourself. This is the great principle of the Torah. Zeh klal gadol b'Torah." The greatest work we do is the work of loving each other. When we come to challenging, unreal days, we can feel at a loss for words, at a loss to know what to do. When we are in territory we don't know, we may feel we don't know what tools to use to navigate it. In Judaism's emphasis on the great principle of love, we find a tool for all terrain. The same power to love each other that we use on ordinary days. this is what we can and must use now in very unordinary, literally extraordinary days. The Hebrew word for principle, klal, also means general case, the way that, say, cars, trains, and planes are specific cases and transportation is a general case. Loving each other is indeed the general case that covers all the circumstances we come to in our lives. That is why at a Jewish wedding, for example, the couple breaks the glass in remembrance of the destruction of Jerusalem. The couple ritually recognizes that at some point they will enter uncharted territory with problems they cannot foresee. There is no other kind of life than one where this happens. But what makes the difference is that the couple will face uncharted territory together with love. So too, there is no other kind of society than one that at some point enters uncharted territory. So we have to love each other through each day of the coming years the way a couple does when they go through troubles they had never foreseen. Even in uncharted territory, this most familiar tool, love, still works. In fact, it is essential. When we receive and offer love, we find and give healing. It may be a small piece of healing, yet sometimes it is more than we had thought was possible. As the 20th century British-American poet W.H. Auden wrote, "We must love one another or die. May I, beleaguered by negation and despair, show an affirming flame. May we, in our time, show each other the affirming flame of love." Judaism suggests that in the midst of love among each other, we may find the love of the divine presence, according to what this means for each of us. In challenging times, we may not always feel this sense of divine love, and it is okay to acknowledge this. As the great mystic Rabbi Nachman of Breslov of 19th century Ukraine wrote, "Make every effort to pray from the heart. Even if you do not succeed, the effort is precious in the eyes of the Eternal One." Or, as my father says, "I believe in a God who expects me to doubt God's existence." The yearning to feel a sense of divine love is just as heartfelt as any other feeling and just as prayerful. And Jewish tradition guides us to express our yearnings together and to find catharsis and to feel each other's love when we do. Second, Judaism affirms that there is always something we can do in response to any situation we face. In this week's Parshat, Lech Lecha, go forth, Abraham hears the inspiration of the divine voice, according to how we each understand this. God calls out to Abraham, "Go forth from your land and your birthplace and your father's house to the land that I will show you, and I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing." For us as listeners, we cannot help but hear these words in the context of knowing how the story ends. Abraham and Sarah leave their home in Mesopotamia and come to the land of Canaan. But let us hear these words as if we had never heard this story before. That's how Abraham heard them. God tells Abraham nothing about where he is going. Abraham and Sarah are to enter completely uncharted territory. How must Abraham and Sarah have felt? They must have been so scared. We find an insight into their inner state from the celebrated 13th century Torah commentator Ramban, who lived in northern Christian Spain, then suffered an anti-Semitic expulsion and migrated to the Galilee. He knew about uncharted territory. Ramban observes that we only get Abraham and Sarah's point of view many scenes later when Abraham retells the story of their journey, saying, "God made me a wanderer from my father's house." In Abraham's dialogue, this journey is much less sunny than in God's exhortation, "Go forth from your father's house." From Abraham and Sarah's point of view, they are just wandering, not even knowing the destination, let alone seeing it on the horizon. What kept them going? God gives no details about where they are going, but God does say what they must do. Be a blessing. V'heyeh bracha. In other words, respond to what you encounter by choosing right, by putting more good into the world. The great Torah commentator Friedman of 16th century Italy emphasizes this note, addressing the question of what it means for a person to be a blessing. Friedman writes, "A blessing of Adonai, the Eternal One, is when Adonai rejoices in one's deeds." Similarly, in next week's Parsha, God describes Abraham as someone who does what is right and just, tzedakah u'mishpat. This is the call to Abraham, not all the details of what lies ahead of him, because life is not always like that. The call is, do the kind of deeds in which the divine presence rejoices, again, according to how we each understand this. Make choices you are proud of when your head hits the pillow. Find the good you can do in response to the situation you face. Debbie Friedman highlights this idea in her 1989 song, Lechi Lach, an English-Hebrew adaptation of God's call to Abraham. Like the classical Torah commentators, Friedman envisions what else God might have said beyond the Torah's text. She takes God's charge to go to a land that I will show you, and adds, to a place you do not know, making explicit the hardest part, which the Torah leaves implicit. Then Friedman uses the phrase, "and you shall be a blessing," as the song's chorus, repeating it in a rhythmic affirmation that can keep playing inside our spirits long after we finish the song. Perhaps the sense of having a mission was steadying for Abraham and Sarah on their unsteady journey. And they indeed made a difference. They launched the Jewish people and the entire project of ethical monotheism. So may it be for us. When we are in uncharted territory, we may feel not only at a loss for knowing what to do, we may wonder if what we do even matters. We may feel events are too big for us to impact. We may feel a loss of control. As for Abraham and Sarah, so too for us. Perhaps this sense of having a mission, the affirmation that what we do makes a difference, can be a source of steadiness and resilience, and can spark us to do good when good is sorely needed. Third, Judaism affirms that no era lasts forever, no matter how permanent it may seem. And it is the deeds we do that bring us closer to a better era. This week's Parsha shows us several scenes of Abraham in dialogue with the inspiration of the divine voice, and forming a covenant with God. In one scene, God says to Abraham, "Know well that your offspring shall be strangers in a land not theirs, and they shall be enslaved and abused for 400 years. But upon the nation for whom they slave I will bring judgment, and afterward they shall come forth with great wealth," that is, reparations, which the Israelites take from the Egyptians before leaving Egypt. If Abraham's covenant with God is like a wedding with the divine, these words are like breaking the glass. God is warning Abraham that history will not always be kind, because people's choices, including about how to use power, are not always kind. Abraham's own era of journeying, which now seems peaceful and flourishing by contrast with enslavement, will not last forever. But that enslavement will also not last forever. His descendants will be free again and prosperous. Slavery will not last forever because no era lasts forever. God is giving Abraham the sacred affirmation that, in modern terms, this too shall pass. It can be so hard to remember this when we are in the midst of a hard time. We look around at what is happening, and it is all we see. God's words to Abraham guide him to acknowledge that hard times come and empower him to remember that hard times go. These words can empower us to remember too. I would like to share now a teaching from our Rebbitzin, Katie Rosa. We say in Jewish tradition, may you go from strength to strength. Mechayo el chayo, quoting Psalm 84. It is okay to acknowledge that sometimes in between one strength and another, there is a chasm. And when we are in that chasm, we deserve to remember that we will come to the next strength. This spirit, this sense of history, acknowledging hard times and affirming that they do not last forever, is woven deep into the Jewish consciousness. As the beloved Israeli singer-songwriter Meir Ariel sang in 1990, "But we got through Pharaoh, we'll get through this too. Aval avarnu et paro, na'avol gam et zeh." Even since 1990, let alone since Abraham or Moses, each of us in our own lives and American and Israeli societies have faced our own times of Pharaoh and gotten through them. As this principle was true for Abraham and Moses and for Meir Ariel, so it is true for us now. And the way we reach steadier, sunnier times, the way we get through this too, in Ariel's words, is precisely through the good act we do, through striving to be a blessing, like Abraham and Sarah. We do not have to wait passively for a better time to come. Indeed, we cannot wait passively, or it will not come. Each time we do good, the situation is now that much better than it was before. We can take solace in knowing we have done all that we can do. The sum of the impact each of us makes over each day we make it is a better world. On Wednesday, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, the president of the Union for Reform Judaism, sent this message with wisdom that can speak to each of us regardless of affiliation. I believe in the same core Jewish commitments that have called generations of our people to use our God-given gifts to shape a world of holiness, dignity, justice, and love. Together, we will confront these challenges by promoting dialogue, embracing diversity, and advocating for a society rooted in justice and respect for all. We will care for the orphan, the widow, and the stranger, paraphrasing the prophets. We will remain firm in our values and bring them to bear in the public square. In all these ways, Judaism gives us wisdom to guide us as we head into the unknown. The wisdom that we still and always can love each other. That we have the power to respond to the challenges we face by striving to be a blessing. That no era lasts forever, and it is through our good acts that we build the next era. As deep as any hard news may be, these truths are even more fundamental. No hard time, even the most profoundly hard, can lay claim to being the entire story of existence. No hard time can take away our power to love each other, our power to strive to be a blessing, our power to remember that hard times pass. These truths are part of what our tradition means by the idea of God. When Judaism talks about God, it is talking about all that is vaster than any one time and place, and all that is more fundamental than any single piece of news, even the most consequential. The presence of all the ethics in the world, all the truth in the world, the call to justice and love. This eternal presence was there in Abraham and Sarah's time. It is here now, and it will be here long after now. And this eternal presence is calling out to us as it did to Abraham and Sarah, both charging us and reassuring us, and you shall be a blessing. Shabbat Shalom. Please join me now in singing Debbie Friedman's beloved modern English-Hebrew adaptation of the Call to Abraham, Lechi Lach, at the top of page 341. a place you do not know. Lechi Lach. On your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. Lechi Lach. Lechi Lach. And I shall make your name great. Lecha. And all shall praise your name. Lechi Lach. To the place that I will show you. L'simchat chayim. L'simchat chayim. L'simchat chayim. Lechi Lach. And you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. Lechi Lach. One more time. And you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a